I gotta get it, don't mindset.
It's been 15 years since IndyCar visited the Michigan Speedway, but today, the virtual drivers are ready to go at a bumpy yet a fast Michigan International Speedway. Hello everyone and welcome back to RaceSpotTV and round 2 of the 2022 Season 3 iRacing IndyCar Open Championship. With myself, Arjuna Kankipati, delighted as always to be joined by the one and only Andrew Kinsella. And Andrew, we're at a track where the speeds are going to be furious, the entertainment is bound to be exciting, but most importantly for our drivers here today, it's a race where setup might not make the biggest difference.
Last time out at Road America, Arjuna, we had one of the fastest road courses on the service, but now we have one of, if not the fastest oval for IndyCars on this service, barring, of course, the big iRacing super speedway that we have. This is a tremendous challenge mentally for these drivers here today. As you mentioned, setup not as big an issue because the draft will just be so powerful. But from a mental standpoint, it's going to take a lot of discipline for these drivers to come home in victory lane here today.
And of course, you say one of the fastest road courses that we have here in America. It was an exhilarating race, but one not without its own share of controversy, without its share of drama. We thank you for joining us as we get ready for the second round of 12 in this 2022 Season 3. We'll look at the schedule right now. 100 laps, 200 miles on the board for us today. But now, after this, we go back-to-back road racing. Once here still in the United States, but we cross the pond to the Circuit de la Sarthe. That's going to be a fascinating race with 16 laps on the board through the French countryside and then a doubleheader of oval races. But of course, Andrew, we look at the schedule, we look at the type of variety that we have, and that's always what makes IndyCar American open wheel racing so intriguing.
Variety is absolutely the right word to capture this schedule, Arjuna. You look at even the first 6 races, you have a super speedway, you have an egg-shaped oval that's 1.5 miles long, you have a short, less than a mile oval in Iowa, and you have 3 unique road courses, one in Road America, but Mid-Ohio, a completely different challenge to Road America where it's undulating and tight and twisty, and then the Circuit de la Sarthe, where you are just flat out down those long straightaways. The amount of talent and the amount of versatility that these drivers are going to have in order to succeed this season, it's going to be off the charts here.
So that's a look at the schedule. Remember, 12 rounds, but only the top 8 of your points will count to the championship. So you only realistically have to be looking at 8 of these rounds. Where can I find speed? Where am I going to pick up the points? And after one round is done, here's how the championship standings have shaken out. Connor Harrington, with his victory 7 days ago, sits at the top. Brandon Traino, despite the amount of drama that he went through last Monday, still managed to get some races through the week under his belt, so he stacks up in 7th position. But you look at this field, you look at some very interesting names. But let's talk about the field here today, Andrew, because, well, a lot of times we talk about the strength of field, how many top-level iRacers are in the race, and it's not common to see an oval race see the strength of field upwards of 5,000. But that's what we've got here today. It kind of feels like a World Championship atmosphere.
It absolutely does, Arjuna. This field is made up of some of the strongest oval drivers in the IndyCar, and it's just going to be, I think, a knockdown, drag-out fight between the different teams, between these different drivers, because, as we mentioned off the top, the draft is going to be very important here, and it's going to take all the skill that these drivers possess to make it all the way to the finish in one piece here, I think.
I see John Bodeford jumping in our YouTube chat to say that he'd like to go back to the road courses. But John, you've got 2 of them coming up. This might have been one where we'd have enjoyed you just out there. Setup, not so much of a factor. Instead, it's going to be all about the bravery, the commitment of our drivers, and how they adapt to dirty air through the course of the 100 laps, the 200 miles that lie ahead of us here today. But we're ready to go racing. Go Fast time has come to a close. Let's run you down through today's starting field from the Michigan International Speedway. And it is Brandon Traino who continues this run of qualifying excellence that he seems to have found. With a 32.420, he'll line up on pole alongside the always quick Marco Brazil, who is just under 200ths behind him. Adam Crane and Robert Malechka will share row 2, while behind them it's Christopher Demerit for the Team i5G and Rashad Craig in the 20 for the Indy Alliance Racing Program. Row 4 sees Chris Wilhite and Connor Harrington. Jesper Orman returns to a Monday night alongside Jacob Oster, with Hamilton Akabuze and David Porcelli right behind them. From 13th will be Andreas Eich with Alexander Van der Sant next to him. AJ Musselman and Christian Steele 15th and 16th, with Alexander Russell and Brendan Lichtenberg, the hyperstar, sharing row number 9. Completing the top 20, it's Robin Glenix and Alexis Newsom. Phil Krause, no qualifying time on the board. Just over a quarter of a second splits the 20 times that was set. It's not expected to be such a big factor for Phil Krause to have not set any sort of lap time here.
No, I expect these positions will change almost immediately at the drop of the green flag, Arjuna. This race is going to be fast, it's going to be furious, and it's going to be full of action. And it just goes to show you that small mistakes in qualifying really did cost some of these drivers. You look at Christopher Demerit for i5G, he's up in 5th place, but we have 3 drivers in the back half of the top 20 as well. So it's all down to the driver here as well. As much as we say that it's not setup dependent, it is still very much driver dependent, and it's going to take all of the skill that these drivers have, again, to pilot themselves up towards that front of this field.
Word from Jason Brophy. He's saying that Phil Krause is the chicken, but I'm going to say, Jason Brophy, you are the chicken here. Keys to victory, though, Andrew, as we get set, we begin to roll behind the pace car. I'm sure patience is going to be a virtue. Being in the right position at the right time, which is very much easier said than done. What else do you think these drivers are going to need to come out on top?
I think really it comes down to picking your battles, Arjuna. There's going to be so many opportunities to pass. You're going to have to be on top of your tools for sure, but picking your battles and picking your moments to make your move, that's what it's going to come down to. And the driver who picks the right moment to make their move, that's the one that's going to be in victory lane.
21 cars, not the biggest field that we've had. Do you think we'll have all 20 cars involved in a big old pack of action?
Given what we saw in qualifying and the spread of the teams over across this field, I think that we're definitely going to see a pack of 20 to 21 cars just thundering around the Michigan Oval.
And so it always comes down to this question, if you ask me. Coming to the last lap, coming to the white flag, do you want to be leading this race? Do you want to be in second?
Absolutely 100% want to be in second. The draft is going to be huge. You need to be second, maybe even third coming to that white flag.
This is going to be, well, exhilarating might be an understatement. It's bound to be exciting. It's bound to be fraught with danger. 200 miles, 100 laps on the board. We are ready to rumble at Michigan for round 2 of 12 in your 2022 season 3 of the iRacing IndyCar Open Championship. It's the king of the bricks in control of the field. Brandon Traynor will get us underway, and we're underway at Michigan for round 2 of the championship. Nice tidy start, but they're already 3 wide in the battle for second. Brandon Traynor trying to pick a line, feed some dirty air to help his teammate Christopher Demerit, already up into second. Demerit +3 on this race start.
Yeah, it's a nice tidy start from everyone here so far. It looks like that the drivers are trying to get around Marco Brazil here in the early going, especially Robert Malechka and some of these drivers trying to jockey for position here and really just sort of figure out where their car is going to run best. That's going to be really important here in the early going, because this is really the first opportunity most of these drivers have to run in a pack this big, and your car does react slightly differently in a pack of 2 or 3 compared to a pack of 20 like we're seeing right here.
Starting to see a bit of swap drafting at the front. Traynor and Demerit working together. Plenty of cars migrating up to the high line, which is seemingly where they want to be right now, Andrew. With this 18 degrees of banking, the high line seems to be the preferred groove.
Yeah, you're just able to keep the car nice and wound up on that high side, and I've hung out there a bunch myself, and I really do like the car up there, especially through 1 and 2. 3 and 4, I think you can see them dive down just a little bit more. They're running more of that middle lane. The high lane, I think, will come in more towards the back of the pack in turns 3 and 4, but certainly 1 and 2, that high line is the way to go.
It's going to be the sort of race where, even though there's plenty of passing, we don't get too excited about it because, well, in 2 laps time things could change and swap back around, or even change more dramatically than that. But Demerit leads from Traynor and I5G 1 and 2. Malechka, Crane and Harrington behind them to round out the top 5. Jacob Oster is already up into the 4th position, battling side by side with Adam Crane. A great start from him, a great start from Alexander Van der Sant, +7 on this race start. What do you need to do to find your way forward in these opening 4 or 5 laps of the race, Andrew?
The main thing is to keep up your momentum, and Van der Sant has been doing a really good job of that. He's picking lines where the car in front of him isn't, and it's allowing him to roll through these corners and just keep his revs nice and high, keep himself in that rev range, and really is able to put move after move together just by keeping up that momentum there.
Jacob Oster tried to go down low, but that's now checked him back up as Van der Sant tries to slide up into the path of Connor Harrington, but Harrington's having none of that. Van der Sant will bobble backwards, at least for the time being, in front of Oster. It's Harrington and Van der Sant. You see the car down low gaining on entry. It's on exit where they really seem to lose a whole bunch of time because, of course, you get the ramp off the corner the higher up you are.
Yeah, and you also have to be able to unwind your steering on corner exit, and when there's a car in front of you, you just aren't able to unwind that wheel as much as you need to really maximize that exit, so you find yourself having to lift off the gas just a bit on exit, like Van der Sant did off of 4 there, and it costs you that momentum, and you saw just how authoritative he went to the bottom for a while, but now that he's at the front of this field, the bottom really isn't allowing him to progress very much further.
Now this is where maybe teammate alliances could play a bit of a factor, as Van der Sant and Malechka for Powerslide Motorsport trying to work with one another. Malechka has to go up high at some point to preserve the sweep into the corner that he's looking for. Jacob Oster around the outside of Adam Crane, 3 wide as they come off of turn 4. Again, Malechka plays the team game, but 3 wide across the line. Crane being hung out to dry.
That was an ambitious move there from Oster, but Crane was having none of it, and he, with authority, went down in front of Alexander Van de Sande into turn 1 there. I'm sure Van de Sande probably didn't appreciate that too much there, but we got some really, really close action here. And as you say, none of these passes, I think, really will have a big determining factor in the long term, but they are fun to watch here, Arjuna.
I'm loving it, although again we're just reminding you that we're not going to get too excited for the most part, except if they do decide to be 3 wide at the early stage of the race. You can see from about 10th on back they are very much just waiting patiently. Phil Krause has made absolutely no headway on those in front of him. That might be where he wants to ride around for the time being, as Marco Brazil will now try and slingshot his way past on Alexander Van de Sande. Look at Malechka committed down low, almost in the middle of the line, of the groove, I should say, excuse me. Crane will get around him. Malechka's chance and the attempt to help out Van de Sande might have backfired very slightly. Jacob Oster is now up into third as a Team i5G 1, 2, and 3.
That's very important for i5G because that will really allow them to sort of control the race from the front here. When you get 3 cars at Michigan, you really have the ability to sort of block off the air on any given line in any given corner. And it becomes very, very difficult to dislodge a team from a position like i5G currently occupies.
It might be down to pit stops, whether they're under caution, whether they're under the green. Going to be relatively easy, of course, to get it down onto the lane when you're under caution, but sliding through your box is a big no-no. Executing on pit lane, we always talk about this. Very, very important. Let's check in with Jacob Oster. Like we mentioned, already +7 from where he started. One of the bigger movers, along with Van de Sande and Alexander Russell as well. There's the look on board, and we're going to claim some responsibility. Jacob Oster wearing one of the newest bits of RaceSpot merch. He's got that RaceSpot pin accompanying him today.
And Oster has definitely been the man on the move so far today, along with Alexander Van de Sande. They've both really just been able to go sort of where they wanted to go. Van de Sande sort of stalled out in that 5th, 6th, 7th battle, but Oster, he just went straight to the front here, and he's doing a really good job right now.
Is indeed, as we get a good look on board with him. We get good looks on board with almost all of your i5G drivers tonight, so that is a nice thing to be able to have, to see where they're looking, to see where they're focusing. And talking of one of the other Team i5G drivers, Brendan Lichtenberg, already up 6, up into 12th. He's battling with Jesper Orman. Good to see Orman back on a Monday night. Chris Wilhite's behind them with Hamilton Akabuze as well. Alexis Newsom. Big surprise to see Newsom all the way down the field, Andrew. She seems to be struggling to make her way forward.
I do think that there is some strategy going on here, Arjuna. I would think that Newsom and Krause, knowing how strong they are, even though Krause is a little bit stronger on the ovals, or on the road courses than the ovals, Newsom is certainly an oval specialist, so I'm wondering if there's just a little bit of fuel saving going on for them. They know that with this draft and with this car here today, they can probably pass at any point in time. So I like the strategy of just sort of hanging back, letting the race sort of play out for these first 20 or so laps and just save fuel, save tires, and then suddenly you might just have a little bit of a fuel advantage come that first round of stops.
Still going back and forth for the race lead as we get the look on board with Brandon Treno in the number 3 machine. So again, we talked about the strength of field earlier tonight. 5,000, more than 5,000 is the average iRating for our drivers here today. The lowest of them is David Porcelli with just 3,827 iRating. It is a stout field, and most significantly when we look at that number, Andrew, is the fact that this is not going to likely be a drop week for anyone inside the top 5 of the points here today. You are going to get some good haul of points on the board. Do you remember as well, we had a record points total last season here in this championship?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think we're on track already to break that based on the average of the first 2 weeks if we can keep this up, because as you mentioned, points are really dependent on what the strength of field of your split is. So the higher the strength of field, theoretically, the more challenging it is to win, so you're rewarded with more points. And so, as you mentioned, the drivers in this top 5 here today, whoever they are come the end of these 100 laps, they're going to be rewarded with a massive points haul here.
Some great camera angles. You see the speed that these cars have as they ramp their way through turns 1 and 2 side by side between Andreas Eick and Robin Glenix. A bit of separation forming between 16th and 17th, now up to almost 0.8 of a second. How far back can you afford to slide, Andrew, before you lose the draft of those in front?
You actually have a fairly long ways that you have to slide back before you're fully out of draft range. I would say it's probably 1.5 to 2 seconds to be fully out of the draft range. The problem is that when you're at the back of a train like this and you get separation, the drivers in front of you are also in the draft, so they're overspeeding just a little bit as well. So if you're, say, a second to a second and a half back, you're really going to have to do something special in the corners in order to keep up. Even though you do still have that sniff of the draft, it is doable to get back up, but you really don't want to drop back any further than that.
Alexander Van der Sent still digging down on the low line where you will burn your tires up a little bit quicker, Andrew, but we have, I don't want to say relatively cool track conditions, but you can see there's a bit of cloud cover above the track. Track temperature is only 46 degrees Celsius. I saw some practice sessions where it was upward of 50, 55 degrees Celsius. Still not an easy day for the Firestone Robber.
No, it certainly won't be, and you're already seeing that it's getting harder and harder for these drivers to follow just as closely as they were right at the beginning, but they are still able to do it, so that's a good sign for, especially if you're in sort of that back half of the top 10 range like Brendan Lichtenberg or Jesper Orman. It's a good sign that so far, 20 laps into the run, you're still able to keep up rather nicely, so definitely it'll play a part, but I don't think it'll play a part as big as we thought that it was going to when we were seeing some of those temperatures earlier, as you mentioned.
Like Andrew said, once you get 3 cars out front as a team, it's difficult for those behind to affect anything, and that's what Team i5G have done so far as we cross the line to get to lap 21 of 100 here at Michigan. It's i5G 1, 2, and 3. Jacob Oster in third with Van der Sent, Crane, Russell behind him. Malechka, Harrington, Brazil, and Lichtenberg the top 10. Bit of a bobble there for Alexander Russell, who will get in front, or rather get past by Robert Malechka, going back and forth as they dive their way on the entry in towards turn number 3. It's now teammate battles. Crane alongside with Russell. Yes, somewhat different liveries, but we can confirm those are the same teams. Demerit back to the front as Harrington is, well, at one point was up there inside the top 3. He slid backwards to 8th. Working through this run, Andrew, you talked about staying on top of your tools. What are you doing with the front and rear anti-roll bars? What are you doing with the weight jacker?
Yeah, you really want to make sure that you're staying on top of your tools. You want to keep your front bars fairly stiff at a track like this, simply because you don't want the car to heel over too much onto those right side tires in the corner. But where you really get to control the car is with that weight jacker. If you're loose on exit, or if you're pushing through the center, you can really affect some change with that weight jacker. But it is so important to stay on top of it, because it's very easy to go just that little bit overboard. You can either cook your right front and your right rear, and then it becomes very difficult to get it back. But one driver I do want to talk about, you mentioned him just a little bit earlier, Alexander Russell. He's up from 17th to 6th. He's our biggest mover so far in these 23 laps, Arjuna.
And now he's synced up with a teammate. Will Crane and Russell be able to work together to break the stranglehold up front? Van der Sent is trying to do so, but not really able to find a way past on Jacob Oster, at least for the time being. We're not even a quarter's way into this race, but it's been remarkably clean. We still have in effect, 21 car pack, so it is very, very tight with all of our drivers here today. There is the hyperstar in Brendan Lichtenberg in the blue Team i5G machine, as Jesper Orman behind, Connor Harrington in front of him, as we get a look on board with the third of the Team i5G drivers talking away to his stream. And you know, as well as I do, that some drivers have their preferences on how much they want to talk, how much that they want to be chatting during a race. Van der Sent going for second, but going to get hung out to dry for the time being. But unlike at a place like the Nordschleife, for example, where you do want to be somewhat focused at the task at hand, this sort of racing does lend itself to a more casual, relaxed environment, although it's fair to say that we saw that onboard shot with Brandon Traino swapping with Christopher Demerit a couple of laps ago. There's not much margin between being able to do this stuff effectively versus wrecking the entire field.
Yeah, absolutely. The margins are so thin at a track like this, especially when you're swapping in the pack or even swapping for the lead. You really have to time it well because it's very easy to actually lose yourself a little bit of time if you're not really timing those swaps effectively. And you also have to keep an eye out for what Marco Brazil just got there. There's a face full of aero wash through that turn 4, and he nearly got into that outside wall coming off a 4 there.
Shot Craig looking on the inside of Marco Brazil as they fight side by side. Brazil, we know, likes a good car in qualifying, but he's struggling with his race pace right now, down from 2nd to 12th before we've even reached the first of our pit stop cycles. And it's looking more and more likely that we're going to get some green flag pit stops. Enter on the exit of turn number 4. You'll want to be coordinating and communicating with those behind you so that they don't run into your rear end. And for the first time, I think, tonight, we are looking at 2 cars that are in danger of being dropped from the pack. Andres Eick and David Porcelli find themselves 1.1 seconds back from Phil Kraus.
Yeah, Andres Eick, he's just on the wrong side of that 1 second barrier there, and he's starting to just lose touch with his teammate Phil Kraus in front of him. But you see that there's no real hurry for any of those drivers at the back. I think they are still anticipating to fight, despite the fact that we've been this clean thus far. I think they are anticipating that we will have at least one caution at some point today, but so far, at least, it's been a very clean race.
There goes Brendan Lichtenberg trying to get past on Connor Harrington to get up inside of the top 8. But again, as we approach the end of this fuel window, the tires are increasingly giving up the ghost, and as much as Lichtenberg wants to fight, it's more about compromising the line of the car in front of you as he'll go up high and try and snatch the spot away from Harrington. What are you doing the further forward you are trying to make moves here, Andrew? Because it does seem as though you ride the high line, you can offend for all you want.
Yeah, I think a lot of these drivers at this point in the run probably aren't too interested in making big moves. I think that the driver that is more looking for something like that is, like, say, a Christian Steele or a Hamilton Akabuzi. I can't even say that word. I'm sorry.
It's a tough one.
But Hamilton and Christian back in that 14th, 15th position where they're sort of got this break along with Marco Brazil. I think they're the ones who are more desperate. If you're in this leading pack, I think you're just content to ride and just get to that first pit stop window and then reassess when you come out of that first pit stop, making sure that you don't make any mistakes on pit lane.
Not too far away from that first cycle of pit stops. Lap 31 officially in the books. Traino leads in front of Demerit at the line, but back and forth they go once more. It's been the story so far. Christian Steele on the outside of AJ Musselman. He'll get on past nice and easily, potentially, but feeling the effects of the dirty air from Marco Brazil and Hamilton Akabuzi. Oh God, now you've got me stumbling over my words as well. We'll just call him the 18 for now. We'll get back on the train when it comes to saying his name. But these cars, well, they have well and truly gone on the wrong side of the 1 second bubble. It's now 1.3 from 12th to 13th position, as look how hard they're fighting as Steele and Newsom try to hold in Glennick's back.
And this is the danger of that strategy that Newsom and Kraus were sort of applying here, is that you get around some people who start to get a little bit desperate, and you also get around the drivers who maybe don't have a car that handles quite as well as some of these other cars near the front. So you get yourself more likely to potentially be caught up in something that you shouldn't be caught up in. So it is sort of one of those double-edged sword strategies where if you can make it work and make the fuel strategy run, as we get a little bit, oh no, Steele!
Steele gets involved with Kraus. Are we going to see the yellow fly? Well, 2 cars go scrambling before the yellow comes out, but there we are. It's our first caution of the day, and Christian Steele, maybe contact there with Robin Glennick, is the victim that sees the yellow fly.
I was just saying that you were putting yourself in the danger area by being that far back in the pack, and unfortunately it's bitten Christian Steele right there. The man behind the drive for 5,000 strength of field has had his day cut short just before this first pit stop window, but yeah, that was an unfortunate one, and I gotta say, Rob, he needed to give just a little bit more space to Christian there.
Let's see if we can spool up the RaceSpotTV replay machine. So off of turn 4, you can see Steele tries to block the line of Unglenix, then he's going to the inside of Brazil. 2 comes into 1. Kraus is going to be lucky to have gotten away with that one, and see how close it was. Not necessarily for David Porcelli, it was Andreas Eick that got a whole world closer ride on board with Lexus Newsom here, and see what happened. Unfortunate, and Phil Kraus, I think, will be lucky if he got away without any damage there.
Yeah, it certainly would be a stroke of luck for Phil Kraus if he got away with damage. And again, yeah, you see Rob, he just goes low and then he comes back up the track just as Steele starts to pull out just a little bit from Brazil. So it is 2 cars into 1, as you say there, but I'm going to put that a little bit more on Rob just because he had so much track there at the bottom. You got to be cognizant of what the other drivers are doing, particularly if you're going into a 3-wide situation, which they were there.
Well, pit road, an extremely busy place. We were coming into that first cycle of pit stops, and of course, well, the caution means we don't see the green. Pit stops instead, we see the cautions play their part. Van der Sant up nice and early. He'll be alongside with Demerit on exit. So it'll be Demerit from Van der Sant, from Traino, Oster, Crane, Russell, Harrington, Malechka, Wilhite, and Orman, the top 10. A bit of shaking around, and most importantly, it's no longer an I5G stranglehold on the podium positions.
Yeah, that was a lightning stop there from Alexander Van der Sant. He was able to get on and off the jacks extremely quickly and leapfrog 2 out of the 3 I5G cars. So very impressive pit lane there from Van der Sant. And I do think that one of the things that happened there was Van der Sant did qualify so much further back in this field, and your pit boxes are set by your grid slot. So in Van der Sant's case, he had a nice clean entry, a nice clean exit, and he was really able to pick his box out there, and I think that just gave him that little bit of an advantage there.
So, caution 1 in the books. It's come just after we were about to enter the green flag cycle of pit stops. Christian Steele is stationary on pit lane. Phil Kraus spent 24 seconds getting repairs to his car, but seems to be back up and going at the tail end of the field. We'll have to wait and see if there's any lasting damage to him. While Hamilton Akabuzi is also seemed to have taken some repairs. 16.3 seconds was his pit stop. Phil Kraus comes back in, so clearly not completely out of the woods just yet.
Yeah, and I suspect that Kraus, he's just trying to figure out whether or not his car is going straight and whether he'll be able to keep up here at this point. And just now is the time to take any possible repairs that you can and get that car as good as you possibly can. But it's a tough situation if you have suspension damage. We mentioned this before the Road America race, Arjuna, but iRacing did tighten up just how much is repairable in terms of suspension damage on this car, making it just a little bit more realistic in terms of what can be repaired and what can't. So that could be coming back to bite Phil Kraus here just a little bit.
And coming to that as well, it's the first race, or first super speedway race, I should say, that we've had with this new draft model, Andrew. What's that done to the car, to the way it handles in the packs? How is that playing out in this race so far today?
Yeah, I think that what it's done is it's allowed us to have that sort of bigger pack that we saw for most of that first run. It's reduced the aero push just a little bit. It's not a huge change, but it is just enough to be noticeable at a place like Michigan where you are so draft dependent. And it just allows for, I think, a few more moves and just that little bit more security in the draft through these corners, particularly turn 3 and 4.
So, pace car off. 37 laps will be done. Coming back to the restart, it's Christian Steele, our sole retiree of the race so far. Demerit leads us back underway. Behind him, Van der Sant, Traino, Oster, Crane, and Russell. We're racing once more at Michigan. It's a nice, tidy start by those up front, but Robin Glenix has gone through the grass. Maybe a hardware failure for him, but that shouldn't bring out the caution. We continue rolling on lap 38 of this race.
Yeah, that was a strange one from Robin Glenix there. I'm wondering if he might have had some residual damage from the contact he had with Christian Steele. Right now, we've got a battle for the lead. Alexander Van der Sant with authority under Christopher Demerit there, and that is the first time that a non-I5G car has led all race so far.
But again, it's the back and forth that we expect to see. Demerit will slide on through. Traino's going to try and run up to the high line, getting very close behind Alexander Van der Sande as they file themselves into line behind Demerit for the time being. Plenty of fighting further back as Newsom and David Porcelli have swapped around, but there comes Van der Sande again. He's not letting the i5G machine swamp him down.
Absolutely, and Van der Sande is going to want to stay in this top two here. He's not going to want to let Brandon Traino or Jacob Oster get back in a position to be swapping with Demerit. And one of the reasons for that, Arjuna, is that we talk about tire wear and how, especially as that run went on, you started to notice the tire wear more and more. Being one of those top two drivers really allows you to take care of especially your front tires a lot better than you can if you're back in the pack. So that's going to be very important for Van der Sande, is just staying in that top two swap with Demerit here.
Backwards, Newsom, Craig, Musselman, Brazil, all fighting. Of course, this at one point, maybe 6 months ago, you could have, well, you never would have seen all four of these drivers representing one solitary team in the form of Indy Alliance Racing, but these are all drivers that have represented IAR at some point or another. Phil Krause is starting to pick up the tempo to the inside. He went on Alexis Newsom, nothing doing there. 11th and 12th, broken up by 1.2 seconds. It's a good breakaway. Sometimes that's what you see on these single file restarts. And speaking of the restart, let's ride on board with Robin Glennox and let's figure out what happened to him as they got back underway. Not initially on the jump, and then you see the checkup, has to try and slow it down, but loses the control, gets very sideways on him, and he runs himself straight into the wall.
Yeah, so that's just an unfortunate incident that can happen at a place like Michigan, because you do have just such a long line of cars waiting to get back on the throttle, and sometimes you just don't anticipate it properly, and that's what happened with Robin Glennox there. But really good sign here in the early going. As you mentioned, Phil Krause, he's showing some speed again. So that tells me that at least most of that damage that he had from that beginning, or that first wreck, it's been repaired at this point. But we're watching a replay here, or sorry, we're watching a battle here with Alexander Russell with his teammates, along with Connor Harrington as well. So we've got some great battling, 3 wide through the middle of the corner there.
I mean, obviously, you look at the fact that they're running so close and you realize that the tires really do fall off quite considerably. Not in lap time, maybe, but in terms of grip, yes, they are definitely going off a cliff at some point or the other. Almost 3 wide on the exit of turn 2. Jacob Oster around the outside of his teammate. Brandon Traino will play the team game there. There comes the dive from Jesper Orman to take it 3 wide. Malechka's on the outside. Harrington's in the middle, but Malechka's going to win against the two of them.
And it's worth noting on that tire front, Arjuna, that the temperature is creeping up ever so slightly here. We're up to 116, 117 track temp. That's 47 Celsius, so we have gone up just another degree. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but it really does make a difference. Every degree that you go up, you lose a substantial amount of grip, particularly at the end of that run.
This is, well, feisty. Yes, closer than I think we want to see, at least for the time being, because we want to get through a green flag cycle at some point or another. We do like strategy to play its head as well. At a track like this, you are going to go a full lap down, Andrew, which means you pit early, you put yourself in, wait for it, the danger zone.
Yeah, the danger zone is a real threat here, Arjuna, but so is the advantage that you can get by pitting early, particularly if you have some help when you do it, because you can really churn out some fast lap times on those new tires, as we've seen here consistently so far already. So it's one of those things where one of these drivers, probably towards the back half of the top 10, they're already thinking about how can I make that sort of strategy work? Do I have enough trust in the drivers around me to be able to get through an entire pit cycle without bringing a caution out? Because if that does happen, again, you can gain substantial advantage by pitting early.
Phil Krause has gotten up to 12th. The problem is he's leading a pack that is 1.2 seconds behind your race leaders. Top and bottom. At the top you see the battle for the lead. On the bottom you see the peloton, the chasing pack as they try and close the gap. They're going to have to work together here potentially. Brazil and Krause slingshotting back and forth. 3 wide for the race lead though. Brandon Traino takes the point.
And that was a very important move for the I5G team, as that has shuffled Alexander Van de Sant back to third, and so now Van de Sant is going to have to do everything he can to keep Jacob Oster behind him and keep in this leading trio, because again, it's just going to be very, very important that he has access to that clean air, keeps preserving his tires, because I think he's probably the strongest car who's not an I5G car in this field right now, but because he's surrounded by I5G cars, that's not going to make a difference if he isn't able to stamp his authority on this segment of the race here.
I think there's maybe some team games that we'll see. It's an I5G 1, 2, and 3 again, and indeed Demerit and Oster able to pinch Van de Sant down low, and Van de Sant's going to go from the battle for the race lead to the battle to stay inside of the top 5. He's behind Crane and Russell for the Satellite Racing team.
Yeah, you saw on screen there, Van de Sant had a pretty big bobble coming out of 2 there. He had to go incredibly low, and that's just because the back end of the car was starting to walk around there. So I think Van de Sant at this point, now that he's lost that lead battle, he's going to just sort of settle back in here, trying to get his tires back underneath him. And he was doing some very intense battling there for a few laps, so he's just got to cool those tires down, let them come back underneath him, and then he's going to regroup it and go for it again, I think.
This time at the line, we reach the halfway marker of this race. Brandon Traino ahead of Demerit, Oster, Crane, Russell, and Malechka inside of the top 6. 1 caution so far, 2 retirements. Christian Steele involved in that wreck with Robin Glenix, and then Robin Glenix on the subsequent restart, losing control and slamming himself down into the wall. They're 2 wide, about 2-3 rows deep behind. That battle for first with Crane, Oster, Russell, Malechka, Harrington, and Van de Sant all trying to work their way forward. It's Oster, though, that continues to dominate the higher groove. He holds on to third.
Yeah, and it's really turned back into the same thing that we saw at the during the first stint, where with that I5G at the front, you have Demerit and Traino swapping positions, and then Oster just, as you say, doing a great job on that high line, and because of what his teammates are doing in front of him, it's really just allowing him to stay in that high line. Neither of his teammates are really running super high like he is, so you just see just how much dirty air those 3 I5G cars can create by spreading across the track like this. But one thing to mention, that second group, it is starting to regain that lead draft. Marco Brazil, Alexis Newsom are starting to sort of pull this second group back towards that leading pack. They're under a second behind now.
So Michigan, Fontana, and what other speedways are somewhat similar to this, Andrew? Because my mind is somewhat blanking me right now.
Those are the 2 sister tracks there, Arjuna. Penske Corporation built both Michigan and Auto Club. It was California Speedway
yes.
Originally, but it is. These are the 2 similar tracks. There aren't really any other tracks quite like these. There used to be Texas World Speedway was the other one.
That's the one I was
in the
thinking
trio,
of.
but it has been unfortunately retired through some political maturations. But it was quite an actually interesting track, because it was far bumpier than either Michigan or Auto Club ever was, and it was really sort of the driver's track of the 3 from everything I've read about it.
Yes, well, the reason I kind of bring this point up is because, of course, we don't really go racing like this anymore in the real world. It's a dangerous proposition. Speeds upwards of 200 miles an hour for almost the entirety of the track. The loads that the cars and the drivers go through on the 18 degrees of banking. The reality that if you have a crash, it is going to be a big one, but it's why we love sim racing. We can do stuff that sometimes in the real world you can't afford to do, you wouldn't want to do, or maybe it just doesn't make sense to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I do hearken back to the glory days of Michigan back in the mid to late 90s, especially. this was one of the first tracks that I actually sort of remember the race happening. And the race in particular that I remember is that 1994 race where it turned into a race of attrition, but at the same time there was a lot of driving that you had to do no matter what kind of car you had, but going 240 miles an hour into a corner, it just seems like a bygone era, but at the same time it's an era that I would love to return to.
It's only 15 years since we last came to Michigan. It's not too distant a memory for us to do it again, potentially. Down the run into turn 3 they come again, inching our way towards another pit stop cycle. About to be 21 laps in the books on these tires. Of course, we'll include a lap or two under caution as well. Not too far away from potentially seeing green flag pit stops play a factor. Russell tried to go aggressive on Van der Zandt, who slammed the door shut, went low. Malechka's working that upper groove as he's now the next car in line to try and take it to the i5G trio at the front of the field. If you're Malechka, how are you setting this one up, Andrew? Are you maybe thinking about trying to do this in the pit stop cycle?
I think that if you're Malechka, you're definitely exploring your pit stop options here at this point. He's definitely one of the drivers that I would think might try that undercut maneuver, especially if both he and Van der Zandt come down at the same time. Just having the two teammates right there together will be very important. But I got to say that as much as we've talked about the i5G cars at the front, the Satellite Racing team and Powerslide Motorsports, they've been staying right with the i5G drivers, and they're having a cracking battle between themselves as well. And you really see that both of those teams are really trying to position themselves in that second best team spot to really try to capitalize on i5G in the final stint, I think.
It's working lap number 60. If we go green, this race is estimated to last 22 more minutes. We saw the look on board as Jesper Orman's going to lose a couple of positions as he lost a bit of momentum there. We've seen the looks on board, we've seen them be calm, but in a race like this, surely there's some anticipation. The mental turmoil of, okay, I want to be risky, I want to make up some ground, but I know if I'm too risky, if someone else is pushing the envelope a little too far, what are we entering in? The place where crashes start to happen, Andrew.
Absolutely, and especially at this point in the run where the tires are just starting to give up the ghost, the car starts to skate across the bumps here at Michigan, and when it starts to do that, it can become, you can become in over your head very, very quickly in some of these scenarios, particularly on corner exit. It becomes very important to be very in tune with what your car is doing and be in the right tools, because, as I said, the margins get thinner and thinner the longer that we go into this stint.
Van der Zandt centered around the outside of Crane, so he's back up into the top 5, and now there are two Powerslide Motorsports cars that can try to work together to try and move their way up forward. Crane will see the outside mirrors filled with Russell, his inside mirrors filled with Lichtenberg, who has been slowly carving his way up through the field. Plus 11 so far this race as he battles side by side with Russell.
It's been a sort of typical Brendan Lichtenberg race. He hasn't necessarily rocketed to the front. He just sort of slowly, methodically worked his way up there. And I can guarantee you that if he can make it up those 3 more positions into that 4th or 5th spot, that his teammates are going to be very, very grateful at the front, because it's going to be nigh on impossible to get around 4 i5G cars on the final stint.
Lichtenberg still down low as Russell's gotten in front of Adam Crane. Here comes Jesper Orman to have a peek to the inside on Brendan Lichtenberg. Again, all just looking for some clean air, to hit the nose of their cars. They're getting, again, increasingly single-filed out right now, working lap 28 of the run as, of course, the tires begin to fall bit by bit away from them. We're reaching that point, Andrew, where you could come in and you could pit. I would assume that maybe working lap 68 or so, you might try and get an undercut working. Do you think the undercut's the way to go?
Again, it's one of those plays where it's high risk, high reward. You can really undercut here and get some good time, particularly if you can come out with someone who you can draft with and swap with. You can really undercut what the leaders are doing, but at the same time, you just put yourself in that danger zone. It's a huge risk. So if I'm, say, Jesper Orman, Chris Wilhite, Alexis Newsom, I'm definitely looking at that undercut. If I'm at the front of this field, it's a much tougher proposition to make that call.
We're going to turn up the engines for a couple of moments. Enjoy the sights of sounds of IndyCars at Michigan. Almost feel the air moving you as you sat on board down low on the track, with our cameras brought to us by Dougie Beard. The sensation of speed is second to none with these Indy cars. They are so impactful as they move the air forward upwards of 200 miles an hour. And personally, I know there are some mixed opinions on this. I feel like these Dallara IR18s, Andrew, look even better with the aero screen. It really does make these cars look like almost jet fighters in their way, and I know at some point we'll get a new chassis that will incorporate the aero screen a little bit better into the car for a better mechanical chassis feel, but at least for the time being, as a stopgap solution, these cars look fantastic.
Yeah, I have to agree, Arjuna, and we've definitely, I think, gotten very used to having these aero screens on these cars. I went back and I looked at some old races from that sort of 2018, 2017 range, and it just, the cars almost looked foreign not having those aero screens there. It's just become a part of the car, and of course the safety aspect in the real world, it's just second to none what this aero screen has done. We've seen already in the short time that they've had them on the cars, the number of drivers that have been saved from potentially serious incidents, such as Kyle Milot with the spring at Texas earlier this year. It's just been an incredible boon to the series to have that type of safety of the drivers going forward.
Marco Brazil has been the first to come down onto pit lane as he tries to get the undercut working in his favor. We cross 70 laps in the books, just 30 to go here. Inching towards seeing cars down on the pit lane. Of course, next week is not just the virtual trip to Mid-Ohio, but coinciding with the real-world NTT IndyCar Series, visiting what is one of the funnest and most underrated tracks in North America. As Alexander Van der Sant, I saw him come down low. I did wonder what he was thinking. He's thinking it's time to come down to pit lane.
And I suspect that this will tip off the pit stops going forward here. I like that Van der Sant coming in at this point. He is going to get a small undercut here, I think. It shouldn't be too big, because I do think that most of the drivers will pit in the next 2 to 3 laps here. But being the first one to react, I never think that that's a bad call in a situation like this.
So Van der Sant nice and tidy there. You can see the pack well and truly up to speed. Doesn't look like anyone at the front is coming down to pit. Connor Harrington will box from just the edge of the top 10. The trio at the lead still working their way through. There's Van der Sant. There are your leaders. Van der Sant will come out straight into the thick of the pack.
And that's actually very important for Van der Sant, because he's going to be right in the draft. It's going to allow him to get up to speed as quickly as possible. And this potentially will allow him to slingshot just a little bit as these drivers start to peel off in front of him. So I think it was very important that he get off pit road where he did and into that pack.
High commitment, high reward for both Demerit and Traino. You saw how late on the anchors they were to get down up to the pit lane limit, but they've done it tidily. Does not look as though they are going to be getting a penalty. Of course, Trainer will have the best of the pit boxes. Doesn't have to back that car up as they both go up on the jacks. Full tank of fuel, maybe a little less, and 4 Firestone tires being fitted to their cars. They will roll in symphony as they get back up to speed. Off the limiter they come, nice and tidy. Where do they feed out in comparison to Van der Sant?
That's going to be the question, is can Van der Sant get out in front of one or both of them? It looks like Van der Sant might just be able to get in front of Demerit for sure. It'll be touch and go with Traino, though. That was very important that Van der Sant got that undercut, and he will take the lead from Brandon Traino here.
He'll be thanking his lucky stars. Yes, presumptive race lead. Be thanking his lucky stars that he has a teammate like Robert Malechka that really gave him that slingshot, like Andrew was mentioning, to the race lead. Wilhite, Oster, Craig, and a bunch of other cars onto pit road, this time by including Phil Kraus. But crucially, it's that battle up front where now Van der Sant was in front of Traino and Demerit, but it swapped around on the run down through turn 2. Traino's blocking the line for Van der Sant, 3 wide for the race lead, with Malechka feeding a bunch of dirty air to Christopher Demerit, but with fresh tires, he's hanging down low. Malechka peels off to pit lane, almost noses himself on Demerit.
Oh my, that was a sudden move there from Robert Malechka, and I know that Christopher Demerit probably did not appreciate just how hard that Malechka had to turn across his front nose there, but that's cost Demerit at least 4 or 5 car lengths compared to your leading duo here, and that's definitely wasn't ideal for that blue and black and gold number 1 car, but yeah, it's starting to settle down just a little bit here. We do still have a few drivers still yet to pit, but the important thing is that all of our leaders are still on the lead lap here, as we see Rob Malechka making his way back onto the track here. Jacob Oster as well. Actually, I think Malechka might have had a little bit of a slow pit stop there, Arjuna.
Malechka was in pit lane for 8.7 seconds, not that much longer than everyone, but when a tenth of a second can be a big margin, he was almost a full second quicker than Van der Sant in pit lane. Here comes the final takers onto pit road. Russell, Crane, and Newsom. We'll see if they'll have fresh tires to fight at the end of this race.
Yeah, and that was the one benefit to going long, is having those fresh tires. We saw just how much that the tires were starting to fall off. If you could make the tires last a little bit longer and go a little bit longer on this stint, you're going to have fresh tires for the end. The trick is whether or not this breakaway here of 5, maybe 6 cars when you consider Malechka in there, if any of the drivers coming off of pit road are still going to be with them when they get onto the backstretch here.
Doesn't look as like that's going to be the case, as Alexander Russell will lead that train off, but still getting up to speed. He's already about 8/10 back from Malechka, and the gap is growing, so they're going to have to use those tires to their advantage. Van der Sant getting swarmed. Oster's up to the lead. Traino in second. Van der Sant gets the nose chopped off. Here comes Jesper Orman as well. A 5-car breakaway for the lead. Malechka's not too far away, 3 wide on the run to turn 1.
We really haven't talked a lot about Jesper Orman there, but he's inserted himself firmly into this top 5, top 6 conversation. And if there's one driver that, like, you sort of like to be in this scenario where the other drivers maybe don't know quite what you have. So with Orman, he hasn't really been around this top 5 the way that the rest of that top 6 has been so far, so it could be to his advantage here that he's sort of chosen now to really assert himself in this race.
Calling this a hornet's nest does it a disservice. Van der Sant will slide backwards behind the i5G trio and will lose out to his former teammate in the form of Jesper Orman. He's now back to 5th. Malechka's behind him. It's going to take some work for Powerslide Motorsports to wrangle control of this race. Van der Sant straight back down the inside, though, trying to get 2 in 1.
And you can see just how much that Jacob Oster is lifting at the end of these straightaways by what Van der Sant did right there. Oster basically has to get out of the gas, well out of the gas, come the end of this straightaway, because otherwise he's just going to go right into the back of Christopher Demerit with the draft that he has. So it allows you to dive if you time it right, like Van de Sant did. The question is whether you're able to maintain that momentum and actually complete the pass, which so far we just haven't seen anyone be able to do that on that inside for one of these top 4 positions.
And it's closed up behind. Russell's joining the party, so is Wilhite, Crane, Harrington, Newsom, Kraus. The names continue to stack up thick and fast. Again, 3 wide on the run into turn 1. Less than 10 minutes to go in this race. Less than 20 laps to go. This is crunch time.
Absolutely, Arjuna, and if I'm Alexander Russell, I'll be smiling that they did so much fighting that I'm now suddenly back in the battle for this race lead. But meanwhile, we've got a new i5G car at the front. Jacob Oster going to the front here, over top of his teammates Treno and Demerit. I think that maybe we're starting to see some cracks in the cooperation between the i5G drivers. Now that we're into this sort of 20 laps to go, I have a feeling that the gloves are just about to come off here.
Well, if the gloves weren't off before, it's gone from a boxing match to an MMA fight to a bare-knuckle brawl, all in the blink of an eye. Malechka, with the later pit stop, might have fresher tyres than all but the likes of Russell, Crane, and potentially Newsom as well. He hits the point for a moment or two. Treno's back up front. Russell's flirting with getting his way up to the race lead as well. He'll dive down low. Alexander Russell going for the race lead. Will try and get it on the corner exit, but Treno has the momentum and holds on for now.
What a move there from Russell to the bottom, but Chris Wilhite is another driver on those fresher tires, and he's looking for the race lead as well here. So really you can see that tire advantage does matter, and the driver that has the worst tires right now is driver second on the bottom, that purple and white car. Oh no, Van de Sant and Oster!
Oster up and over, and the caution flies for the second time today. It's Jacob Oster, it's Alexander Van de Sant that have winded up inside of one another.
And it was a very similar incident to what we saw in that first incident as well, where it was just a hornet's nest of drivers, and we were going 3 wide, and then suddenly there wasn't enough space between the cars, and 2 cars make side-to-side contact, and those same 2 cars will have some major damage there.
See if we
and
can...
It does look like also Jesper Orman has dropped out of this as well, so it could have been
he had
some connection issues as well for him as well.
Yeah, we have seen Jesper Orman with technical issues in the past, and it does appear as though something like that has befallen him. Let's grab a look at the action. Let's grab a look at the Hornet's Nest. Of course, it started with Van de Sant and Oster. Newsom might just have got tangled up in it, but I think she might just have gotten away with minimal damage. We'll watch it all the way off of turn 2 though, because this was brewing, you could tell, and we can give you an update. Alexis Newsom does appear to have damage. She is falling down the order for the time being, but off of the corner, Oster and Van de Sant were both alongside with Malechka up high. Then a little bit of contact with Malechka for Oster sent him down low. From there, he was kind of hooked into Van de Sant. They bobbled up the track, and, well, 2 race cars well and truly damaged.
Yeah, it was just an unfortunate incident there. Malechka was as far up the track as he could be, and I think Oster just got a little bit of arrow wash that he wasn't expecting into the side of Malechka. It bounces off Malechka into Malechka's teammate and Van de Sant. And that's all she wrote for Oster and Van de Sant, and as you mentioned, Newsom with some substantial damage. But we've got a little bit of strategy going on here. Split strategy with 13 to go. We got a number of drivers opting to take the fresh tires here to go towards the end, but then we have our top 5 basically stayed out here. So it's going to be very interesting to see whether the fresh tires pay off, or whether it's the right call to stay out on these older tires here.
So there you go. We're going to have 6 cars that have stayed out there. The rest of the field is down to pit lane for what should be a 11-lap shootout. 22 miles to decide this, but I don't think we're done with the wrecking just yet. What's the saying? Cautions. Well, they breed more cautions.
Absolutely they do, and particularly at a track like this, in a race like this, where the tires We'll have a chance for those top 6 to cool down, so they'll have some nice fresh rubber for at least the first, I would say, 4 to 5 laps of this stint, and then you'll really see the tire difference start to come into effect. So we're going to have some drivers here on slightly faster tires to start, and then we're going to have some drivers that will quickly cross over that speed differential, and I think it's just going to be pure chaos here.
Chaos on a Monday night for IndyCars? Who'd have thunk it? Who would have expected the unexpected? One of the strongest fields that we've ever had on a Monday night for iRacing IndyCar action. The lights go off. Drivers get ready for this restart. So, it's Connor Harrington, the first on the fresh rubber. And Andrew, we've already seen what fresh rubber can do. The ability, the confidence to stick it down low. But with 6 cars up the front, they very well could work together to box those out behind.
Yeah, the question is, will they work together, though? We have 3 i5G cars in that top 6, but the other 3 are desperate to break up the i5G stranglehold on that top spot. So I just don't think that we're going to see that much cooperation between the drivers at the front.
By the time we get to the end of this race, Brandon Traino and Christopher Demerit boxed the earliest, came down to pit lane slightly earlier than everyone else. Their tires will be 27 laps old. Prediction time, who's coming out on top here?
I am looking at that number 7 car of Phil Kraus in 8th position. I think that he is going to draft straight to the front here.
Watch out for the fresh tires. Remember, 6 cars have worn rubber to get back underway here at Michigan. It's been an electrifying race so far. Who will get the elbows out? Who will emerge on top? With 11 laps to go, it's your pole position sitter, Brandon Traino, back in control of the field. He gets us back underway with a nicely timed restart. Malechka gets a nice jump as well as he tries to get in front of Chris Wilhite. Brendan Lichtenberg not getting the best of launches, but that's not going to matter too much, Andrew, as they build up the speed, they build up the intensity. Here come the chopping and changing.
And here comes the 2-wide action, and crucially, Connor Harrington and Phil Kraus well within this lead draft. There's a little bit of a split behind Kraus. Adam Crane falling back just a little bit, as well as the 18 car. But look at the drivers bumping and weaving almost 4 wide down the front stretch here.
Traino has lost out to Alexander Russell as well as Chris Wilhite. Almost contact between Wilhite and Traino. Malechka took avoiding action, ran up the track, checked his momentum up, builds it back though on the exit of the corner. Harrington searching for a groove, so is Phil Kraus as they get on past Brendan Lichtenberg. 3 wide for the lead once more. Traino down low, Wilhite and Russell up high.
Traino said, you're all going to go high, fine, I'll go low, and just sweeps up in front of all 3 of the drivers trying to get around him. But you can see there's just nowhere for that leader to go. Meanwhile, we have Connor Harrington and Phil Kraus knocking on the door of this top 6. Harrington already has gotten around Demerit, and he's looking to get further up this field.
Malechko with a big dive to the inside will get on past for the race lead potentially. He's side by side with Wilhite. An opportunity for the man in the hat to slide up the track. Lichtenberg's followed him through up into second. Wilhite didn't get a great launch off of turn 4. Traino down to the apron will retake the race lead.
That was an aggressive move there from Brandon Traino. We were 4 wide for a second there. None of these drivers are willing to give an inch. Everyone in that top 6, they understand that they need to be in that first position, because otherwise, as these tires start to heat back up again, they have no chance to be able to keep Connor Harrington and Phil Kraus behind. Speaking of which, Phil Kraus on the inside in 3rd position right now.
Phil Kraus has gone from the back into the top 5. Lost out through turns 3 and 4. It's the hyperstar that leads. Malechka jinks all the way down low. Wilhite all the way up high. 4 wide through turn 1. We said the elbows were coming out.
Ooh.
There's contact between Russell and Lichtenberg.
And there's a spin in the back. That's Brazil.
Marco Brazil brings out the yellow flag. We had not crossed the point of no return. We're getting A couple of laps, a couple of miles to determine this race at Michigan.
My, oh my, just when you thought it couldn't get any crazier, we are about to have a 2-lap shootout here to decide this race, and I don't think that there could be a more fitting outcome than a shootout like that, because for the last 10 laps here, we were just holding our breath, assuming that something was going to happen. And I don't know how a number of times there, Arjuna, that we didn't have a much bigger disaster than that.
Let's get a look at what happened then, because it started with the contact with Russell and Lichtenberg, but behind them was where the drama started. So let's start here through turn 1. We'll see what happens with Lichtenberg and Russell as they were dancing with disaster. It was as close to that disaster as you want to come. And while in front of Brazil, the contact was happening, from that brief look that we got, I think Marco Brazil loops it by himself. You can see him putting the weight onto the tires, the force through the tires as he's trying to commit to the corner, and as soon as the banking unwinds the load off of the car, Brazil goes for a ride.
Yeah, we know that Brazil loves to run it as low downforce as he possibly can, and I think what happened here is he just gets a little bit of side force off of Adam Crane there. He gets off of the throttle to try and stay out of Crane and Demerit, who's coming down off that outside lane. And when he does, the weight shifts on his car back onto that rear wheel, and it just isn't able to handle it, and he finds himself on a one-way ticket into that inside wall.
That is not how Marco Brazil wanted his race to come to a close, but like you said, Andrew, it's 2 laps. And now, again, you've already told us at the start of this race, you don't want to be the car leading coming to the white flag. Where do you want to be on this restart? Because really, any expectations of what this final couple of laps will hold have gone straight into the bin. These drivers are scrambling to hold on to what might be a victory here today.
Yeah, you mentioned just how many points are on offer here today, Arjuna. I don't think any one of the top 5 or top 10 is thinking about points right now. All they see in front of them is 2 laps to decide this race, and they see the possibility of coming away with the glory of one of the highest strength of fields that we've had in IndyCar in quite some time. So I think that we're going to see the gloves come off, and it is going to be a wild last few laps here.
Connor Harrington, Phil Kraus on fresh rubber. The only car they were able to dislodge from the head of this queue was Christopher Demerit. And he's got the likes of Musselman, Crane, Acapuzzi, Porcelli, Ike, Craig, all behind him. 21 cars took to the green flag. Just 13 are left on the lead lap, despite the fact that we've only had the 2 cautions so far. It has been, or rather, excuse me, the 3 cautions so far. It has been a fairly clean race so far. Craig, Brazil, Orman, all laps down, seemingly still out there on track. Let's talk about Jesper Orman very quickly, Andrew, because, well, we mentioned the technical issue for him, but he was up there in the thick of the fight for the win when that technical issue presented itself.
Yeah, and there's nothing more heartbreaking than being in an intense race where you fought your way through the field and you put yourself in a position to win, and then suddenly something completely unrelated to you takes you out of the race, and there's nothing more helpless, and I really do feel for Jesper there, because he had driven a great race to that point in time. So it's just one of those things where we don't necessarily have mechanical failures in the real world sense, but we do have what we can call mechanical failures when we lose an internet connection or have a hardware failure, and it's no crueler in sim than it is in the real world as well.
Well, to give the update, it's not going to be a 2-lap shootout. It will be a 3-lap shootout. Andrew, how does that change the mentality of these drivers right now?
I don't think it changes it at all. I think that they all will be going 100% for this win here.
So, it comes down to the final 6 miles. We are past the point of no return. If a caution comes out, it ends the race right then as it stands. So, we can talk all we want about the run to the white flag. It's going to be about where are you when the chips are thrown out to be decided. Robert Malechka will get us back underway, and he's got a healthy advantage over Brendan Lichtenberg. That will not work out in the favor of the Powerslide Motorsports driver though, Andrew, because Lichtenberg on back will get a whole heap of momentum on the run down into turn number 3.
You're absolutely right, Arjuna. Normally you would say that he got a great jump, and in this case he got a terrible jump simply because of the length of the jump that he did. He's going to allow all of these drivers to really draft up on him and come at him with a lot of speed. The question is, though, will they be able to sort themselves out? We got some drivers almost in the wall coming off of 4 there.
Malechka throws the block down on Lichtenberg, but that might have placed the i5G drivers where they want to be. 3 wide on the run down into turn 1. Lichtenberg in the middle, Treno up high, almost 4 wide abreast through the middle of turns 1 and 2. Malechka's going to lose out on the run down into turn number 3. Treno, Lichtenberg get in front. There comes Russell below the white line for a moment, coming to the white flag.
Malechka's going to try and make that bottom line work, but he's getting very close there. Oh, it's so close through 3 and 4.
2 miles left to go as Connor Harrington and Phil Krause get the new Tires Express up to the high line into the fight for the lead. Our race winner 7 days ago might have the longest road around Michigan, but might be in the best position possible. Brendan Lichtenberg will lose it by himself as they're still 4 wide on the run down into the back straightaway. Demerit's looking for a line as well. What is going on in Michigan? Krause and Harrington side by side, but it's Malechka and Treno 1 and 2 and building their momentum to the line. Using the apron is Robert Malechka, but winning this race, I think, is Brandon Treno by 1/1000th of a second. They wreck across the line, but it does not matter. The King of the Bricks is victorious here in Michigan.
What a final few laps that we have just seen here, Arjuna. Treno over Harrington, who we weren't even paying attention to because we were paying attention to Malechka, who was only 13,000ths of a second behind Treno. Our top 4 within 1/10 of a second. What a finish.
Incredible. It does not get much better than that, and my voice has gone for an absolute toss at this point. Let's watch this final run to the line, because it looked as though for a moment that Harrington and Krause squabbling amongst themselves had cost each other the chance of victory. Harrington ducked down low, made his way to the line on the outside, while Malechka and Treno pinched each other as close as they could. Treno lost it on the apron seam. Krause got contact with Russell, but it doesn't matter what happens after the checkered flag. When the flag dropped, Brandon Treno by 1/1000th of a second is victorious here today. We expected fireworks. This was everything, and then a little bit more.
It absolutely was, and it is worth more than one replay for this one for sure, because this is what happened through 3 and 4 on the way to the white flag. Lichtenberg and Treno and Malechka nearly collected each other through that sequence, but then through turns 1 and 2, 5 wide at one point. Count that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with Phil Krause on the outside. Lichtenberg just isn't able to hold on to it, spins onto the inside, but they still say 4 wide.
And look at Demerit with that momentum just flying up through the field. And then this, we'll look from up above, we'll look at that run to the line. How much closer do you need to be to win a race than this? A bit of a hip check from Treno to Harrington, he comes down low. You could not tell the winner at the line because the margins were infinitesimal, but it is Brandon Treno that wins here today to put the Team i5G with Apex Racing team car back into victory lane. This is a finish that will live on in memory for a while, and it is well and truly deserved, but it's Brandon Treno that emerges victorious after 200 miles of insanity around Michigan. 1,000th back. Connor Harrington starts the season off with 2 consecutive podium finishes, while Malechka will round out the podium spots 13,000ths away from a victory. Phil Krause back in 4th after starting at the tail end of the field. He bided his time and ended up as our biggest mover on the day, plus 17 from where he started. Alexander Russell will complete the top 5. Another big mover, plus 12 for the satellite racing driver, with Chris Wilhite and AJ Musselman behind him for the Indy Alliance Racing program. Christopher Merritt slides to 8th in that closing lap, with Hamilton Akabuzzi in 9th, and David Porcelli, another car that we saw struggling at the early junctures of this race, surviving to get a top 10 on the board. Adam Crane and Andreas Eich, 11th and 12th positions, while behind them, the hyperstar Brendan Lichtenberg looped it by himself on the final lap of this race. We classified down in 13th position with Rashad Craig, Jesper Orman, and Marco Brazil all behind him. Alexis Newsom and Alexander Van der Zandt, 2 drivers that were looking feisty, but both involved in an incident with Jacob Oster retiring just with about 10 laps to go. Robin Glenix and Christian Steele involved in the only other major incident that we had here today. Well, take a breath and try and relax, because what a finish that was. Let's go straight down to victory lane and our celebrating winner here today, where Brandon Traino is standing by. Brandon, was it stressful? Was it fun? I don't even know what that looks like, because it was so enjoyable for us up here in the booth.
I would say a little bit of both, to be honest. The entirety of the race till the caution with 15 to go was nice and calm, pretty simple. But then, as you guys saw, it was every man for themselves, and just a free-for-all, and luckily we came out on top.
So talk to us about that final lap. 5 wide at one point, your teammate loses it by himself. The run out of turn 4, Harrington's looking down low to get your draft. You body check him very slightly. You come down low to try and squeeze on Malechka as well. What was the thinking? What was the thought process trying to get to the line first?
Yes, so I was top of 3 with 2 laps to go, I think, and I audibly said over Discord, I was like, this is not where I want to be. I mean, I'm not in a good spot. And, unfortunately, Brendan spun. He caught a seam the wrong way, so it allowed me to move down, and I knew I'd have to run off of 4 to get past Malechka, but I didn't see Connor coming. I did swerve at him, so apologies for that. But, yeah, I don't think we beat him by a nose hair, so we'll take it. 1,000,
yeah, it doesn't get any closer than that, really. And now I want to talk not about the future, but about the past, because qualifying, you seem to have really picked up the tempo there consistently, either at the very front or towards the front of the field. Where have you found a little bit of speed, momentum in qualifying?
On the ovals, it's mainly down to just our setups. On the road course, I got to give a shout out to the Apex guys. They've really helped me kind of hone in my talent, if you want to call it that. We've been working a lot on just consistency with being on the edge and pushing the limit every lap. So as you've seen, the pace in general on road courses has gotten a lot better, but again, comparing myself to those guys from the Watkins 6 hours testing we did, I was 2/10 off over an entire stint. So not bad, but still not great. So yeah, just shout out to those guys. They've helped me a lot in qualifying.
Well, congratulations on the win, and looking forward to seeing how you can carry forward that momentum on the road courses at Mid-Ohio next time out. Congratulations, Brandon Traino.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to Tony Stewart. Gave me the horsepower to win today.
I'm sure it wasn't the demerit engines at all. But we go from Brandon Traino to the second step of the podium, where we're chatting with Connor Harrington again. And Connor, well, how much closer can it get than that?
Pixels, really. But yeah, it was a good race. I'm really impressed. Our setup was able to hang with all those guys. I think we worked maybe a total of like 45 minutes on it. And we were just so bad on tires that the late caution there was what really bailed us out. So, yeah, happy to get a P2, a good solid points race. I was expecting to write this race off for drops, but we'll take a surprise P2 and a big SOF. That's a lot of points in the bag.
Yeah, I was saying that anyone who finishes this race inside of the top 5 or 10 was basically guaranteed to this and not be a drop points week for them. But of course, it's not just about this championship, but we're coming up to this Wednesday, the Lionheart IndyCar Series HyperX Race for the Pole. Of course, coming off a month of May when Team Talon and the private label Team Hype showed plenty of speed in qualifying trims. Slightly different with a fixed setup, but how are you looking forward to this week and qualifying coming up in a few days' time?
Yeah, it'll be interesting for sure. We'll see if we can, we only get one shot at it. It's not like we get all week to just, sit home and do run after run after run. So you get one shot and that's it, and it'll be, pressure on, and I like that. And we'll see how it races. In my opinion, the lack of dynamic weather in the 500 is something that I think something that needs to be addressed. Just because it turns into the lead cars swap and the third guy just has no chance unless there's a late race caution. So, we'll see. I'm excited for it, and we'll see if we can do a little better than we did in May.
And of course, Mid-Ohio next week. Looking forward to that one, or is that one that you might give a skip?
Well, truthfully, I have to buy the track. I've actually never had to run it for Lionheart or Open, just because of where I've been. But yeah, I mean, Mid-Ohio is great. I think any car in this, or any track in this car is a lot of fun, especially with the tire model. As long as you don't catch a landmine or anything like that. But but yeah, it'll be really fun. Obviously, the Monday night SOF races are really interesting. Especially with the strategy and stuff like that. So it should be a really good one.
Good start to the season. Congratulations, Connor, on second.
Yep, thank you.
And from Connor Harrington, we move to the final step of the podium, and the man that was leading coming to the final restart, Robert Malechka. What more did you have to do to win that race?
Honestly, for Brendan not to spin there, I was having Alex in my ear like every 5 seconds tell me the exact location of where Trano was at, because I knew he was my main competition. And once Brendan spun there, Trano was able to get the run and had enough speed into 3 just to carry it and beat me to the line. And also, who else got me? Connor and Phil were hooked up, bump drafting, which I didn't think was possible, but I guess it is.
You can bump draft anything if you want to. That's how the story goes, or something like that. I want to ask more about first your call to stay out a bit longer, that final cycle. Was that all about trying to help Alexander Van der Sant get to the front? Because it worked nicely for him. It also didn't work out too badly for you.
Honestly, I stayed out just to have the best tires, because I knew, at least with our setup, I could run the white line all the way around. Like, 2 seasons ago we raced here? And I did the same thing, where we can hold the white line all the way around for about 5-6 laps. But I think if I have fresher tires, if I pit on that last pit stop under that yellow, I think I can mostly get the win. But I was just a little bit too free in the back end to kind of carry the speed I needed.
We're watching the hellacious wreck across the line. But
Yeah.
What do you think about this type of racing, Rob? It's not what we tend to see nowadays.
I kind of enjoy it. I mean, when you get a stacked field like this was, I mean, I think it's the first time we've ever had 5K, and it's really the best of the best, except for Adam's not here, unfortunately. He's in Iowa. But yeah, I mean, when you have a stacked grid like this where you can trust anyone around you, I mean, we were 4 or 5 wide at times, 3-4 times. So it's great, racing at these 2-mile tracks where you can really lean on and trust the guys around you.
Well, it didn't work out the way that maybe you wanted, but it was a great race. It was a lot of fun. Congratulations on this third, Robert, and looking forward to seeing you next week for Mid-Ohio. Should be a ball there.
Yep, thanks, boys.
Rob Malechka will round out our post-race interviews. And Andrew, have you been able to regain your breath? Have you been able to calm down from that finish?
I've calmed down, but I don't know how composed I am, because that was just a special race that we saw for those last 2 laps. And it really goes to what Rob says, is when you have a strength of field this high with the drivers that we saw on track here today, and the ability for each of those drivers to trust what the other drivers were doing on the track, it's just a recipe for fantastic racing and a fantastic finish. And that was just the just desserts of the race that we saw from all of the drivers here, because they just did an incredible job, and it was a worthy finish there.
And well, it's not long before we go racing again, back to back to back to back. That's how this championship goes. It's how official iRacing competition tends to go as well. But next time we're out racing, it will be round 3 at Mid-Ohio, June the 27th. Join us same place, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, from Thunder Valley. It's always a fascinating race, and it's one where undulation plays a big factor. Really have to work to get past someone here.
Yeah, it's a completely different thing than we've seen both in the first road course race at Road America, but also here today. You're going to have to be tactical, you're going to have to be on top of things, and you're going to have a really good setup for Mid-Ohio and have a really good qualifying effort. You're going to have to be very brave on the brakes into that Turn 5 China Beach area, and we've seen so much action there over the years, both in the real world and the sim. I can't wait to get there.
We're only 2 rounds into this championship, but if it gets better and better like it's done so far, what is it going to be like when we get to Watkins Glen? I don't think we're going to start the broadcast with any sort of a voice, but for now, it's time to bid you farewell. Do remember, it's the week where the Lionheart IndyCar Series makes their pilgrimage to Speedway, Indiana. Join us this Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific for the HyperX Race for the Pole. Before this coming Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, join us for a special presentation on RaceSpotTV, the HyperX Indianapolis 500. Today, though, it's time to bid you farewell. On behalf of the team at RaceSpotTV, we thank you for joining us. We're live from Michigan. Alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati, Andrew Kinsella has been here to witness all the fun. 4-5 wide in the final lap. The winner decided by 1,000th of a second. It's the type of race that you don't get very often. It's the type of race that gets you excited. We'll see you in 7 days' time from Mid-Ohio, but for now, enjoy the rest of the iRacing week.